All right, let's dive into a really powerful story of desperation, a crazy miracle, and all the controversy that followed, right from the 5th chapter of John. We're going to walk through this verse by verse, painting a picture so clear you'll feel like you were there. Okay, let's get into it.
But first, just try to imagine this. 38 years. 38 years of being sick, of not being able to move right, of seeing your hopes dashed day after day. What does hope even feel like after that long? That's the feeling, right there, at the heart of where our story begins.
So, our story kicks off in Jerusalem, at a place that was basically famous for one thing. It was the last chance for the hopeless. A pool where a miracle was possible. But for almost everyone there, it was just a place to wait and wait. All right, let's break it down. Verse 1 tells us there's a festival going on. So picture it. The streets of Jerusalem are buzzing, they're crowded, they're loud. But then, verse 2 pulls our focus away from all that. We zoom in on this one spot near the Sheep Gate, a place called Bethesda. What you need to picture is a big pool of water, surrounded by these 5 covered walkways like open-air waiting rooms, casting these long, dark shadows. Now, verse 3 fills up those covered walkways. Imagine every bit of shade is taken up by people who are sick, blind, lame, paralyzed, just a huge crowd of suffering. And every single person is staring at the same thing, the still water. Why? Well, verse 4 tells us the legend. People believed that every so often an angel would come down and stir the water, and the very first person to get in after that happened would be instantly healed. It's an atmosphere of total, desperate competition.
And then verse 5 zooms in on just one man in this massive crowd, and we get this one single, just soul-crushing detail about him. He has been sick for 38 years. So picture him, a bit older now, his face just etched with decades of disappointment, watching this whole scene play out year after year. 38 years. Verse 6? This is where everything changes. Jesus walks into the scene, and out of all those people, he spots this one man. The image to lock in is Jesus looking right past the crowd, his eyes locking on this man, and just knowing. He sees all 38 years of that struggle. And then he asks this question that seems so obvious, but it's incredibly deep. Do you want to be made well?
Now, listen to his answer in verse 7. It's just heartbreaking. He doesn't even say yes. He just explains his trap. The mental picture is from his perspective. He's lying there, he sees the water ripple, and in his mind, he sees the same movie again and again. He tries to move, but somebody else, someone with help, always beats him to it. He's basically saying, "Sir, it's impossible. I have no one."
But you see, Jesus wasn't asking about the pool or the angel or who could help him. He's about to completely bypass that whole system of hope and do something direct, something that's going to shock everyone.
And then we get to verse 8. 3 short, simple commands that cut right through 38 years of paralysis. Jesus doesn't even touch him. He just speaks. Picture those words hanging in the air with this incredible authority. Rise, take up your bed, and walk. It's not a suggestion. It's a fact.
And the first half of verse 9 is the result. It happens immediately. The visual here is so powerful. Imagine the man feels this jolt, this strength flooding into muscles that haven't worked in decades. He pushes himself up, and his legs hold him. They're strong. He bends down, rolls up the mat he's been lying on for who knows how long, and he just walks. The crowd is just silent, stunned.
But this incredible moment of freedom, it immediately creates a whole new problem. The joy of this miracle is about to crash right into the hard wall of religious rules.
The second half of verse 9 gives us this one critical detail. This all happened on the Sabbath. So in verse 10, the celebration comes to a grinding halt. The healed man is walking along, probably with the first real smile he's had in years, and he's stopped by some of the religious leaders. The visual here is their stern faces, not even looking at his healed body, but pointing right at the mat he's carrying. And their first words are an accusation. It's the Sabbath. It's against the law for you to carry that.
So in verse 11, the man gives a pretty simple, logical defense. The guy who healed me, he told me to do it. But watch how they twist it in verse 12. They totally ignore the "made me well" part. For your mental picture, see them leaning in, completely ignoring his strong legs, and asking like prosecutors, "Who is this man who told you to break the law?" They're not investigating a miracle, they're investigating a crime.
And here's the snag in verse 13. The man can't answer them. He looks around, but Jesus is just gone. He's melted back into the festival crowd. The visual is the man standing there, healed and strong, but suddenly all alone and on the spot, with no idea who just changed his entire life.
Verse 14 tells us that a little later, Jesus actually seeks the man out and finds him in the temple. And this isn't just a casual, hey, how you doing? The visual is really personal. Jesus looks him right in the eye and gives him this very serious warning that connects his physical health to his spiritual health. Look, you are well again. Stop sinning, or something worse might happen to you. This is like part 2 of the healing.
So what does the man do? Verse 15 is short, but it's a huge moment. He leaves the temple, he goes and finds the same authorities who are grilling him, and he gives them the name. The visual to hold on to is the man pointing, or maybe just saying the name out loud. It was Jesus. Now, their investigation has a name.
And right here, the whole story takes a massive turn. You see, healing this one man was like lighting a match, but the fire it was about to start was a much, much bigger debate. Not just about what Jesus did, but about who Jesus is. So what happens next isn't about a guy carrying a mat anymore. It's about Jesus basically standing before a court, having to answer for his actions. And it forces this huge confrontation over his true identity.
So let's look at the charges against him. Verse 16 says they went after him for healing on the Sabbath. But then in verse 17, Jesus says, "My Father is always working and I am working too." Whoa, that just poured gasoline on the fire. And verse 18 tells us why. They knew exactly what he was claiming. By calling God his own Father, they said he was making himself equal with God. And for that, they wanted him dead. That was the real crime in their eyes.
So how does Jesus respond to a death penalty charge? Well, in verses 19 through 24, he doesn't back down one bit. He explains it. He paints this incredible picture of perfect unity with God the Father. The main idea is this. The Son doesn't do anything by himself. He just watches what the Father does and does the exact same thing. He claims they share it all, the work, the power to give life, and even the authority to judge everyone.
But he knows they won't just take his word for it. So in the rest of the chapter, Jesus basically presents his case like he's in a courtroom. He calls 4 witnesses to the stand to prove his claims. First, there's John the Baptist, a man they all respected. Second, his own works, the very miracle they're so mad about. Third, the Father himself. And fourth, their own sacred scriptures, which he says point directly to him.
And that kind of brings us right back to where we started. The story began with Jesus asking a man a simple question about his body. Do you want to get well? But by the time the chapter ends, after Jesus has laid out all the evidence, he's asking a much deeper question. And it's not just for them, it's for us. It's not about our bodies. It's about what we're willing to believe. The man at the pool had a choice to make. And now, so do we.